Heretic represents everything I love and hate about film, and it's unfortunately what makes religion something that people either love or hate, and that is two things. One, control, and belief. But growing up in Utah and being a Mormon for a good chunk of my life, this is something that appealed to me and seemingly the rest of Utah, as at a 9:50 showing, it was completely sold out. An R-rated horror film in Utah never, ever, ever does those kinds of numbers. I'm usually the only person in the theater.
Are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
Come on in.
Essentially, from the start of the film, these women are subjected to tests of faith, whether they completely believe in their church or not, which it kind of hints at the start that one of them, Sister Barnes, may not completely believe in it. But at the end of the day, it's really just a horror movie that's mostly smoke and mirrors, which is sort of the point, and one thing I really didn't like about it that we'll discuss. But Hugh Grant is essentially playing God here. He has these women trapped in his house, and he's created this big labyrinthine project of a basement and a sub-basement, all to prove a point that, hey, maybe God's not real, and if he is real, he's probably not all good. Which is ultimately why so many people fall away from religion and why so many people dislike religion as a whole, because there are a lot of contradictions if you just really start to think about it. If God is all good, then how does he allow so much bad to happen? So many people bring that up, and at one point, Hugh Grant's character even says basically that same thing, where he's like, I controlled every moment of you guys being in this house. I controlled everything to the point where I knew where you were going to end up because I wanted it that way. I wanted all this to happen, and all this bad things, yes, I did them, but you allowed me to do it. If he has a plan, then how do we have free agency? That's a contradiction, and that's something that Hugh Grant is playing with. He's trying to point that fact out. He's trying to point out, like, hey, I have complete control over you, and I've guided you through every step of the way, and yet he does meddle, which is something that God doesn't do, which is a contradiction of the film that I'm not sure is completely intentional, and if it is, I don't know the point of it. I don't know, and that's the problem, ultimately, is that I don't know the point. This movie has lofty ambitions and tries to ask big questions, and yet its ambitions are much closer to the ground, and its answers are very little.
I think that we're being studied.
And that is no more prevalent than at the end of the film when it has this big climactic ending where people are getting killed, Hugh Grant gets killed, the main character gets her throat cut, and the other sister, Sister P, is stabbed in the stomach, and it's like, oh man, this is going crazy, what's gonna happen next? And then it's like, she gets out. And she says a prayer, and there's this contrived diatribe where this Sister P, who is a believer through and through, starts talking about how prayer doesn't work, but she says a prayer anyway. And that's so, and I hated it. I think that soapbox at the end where it's like, oh, this one sister who believed the whole time actually had some cracks in her belief too, but she still chose to believe. It's like, bro, what are we even saying, though? Like, what is ultimately the point? What am I supposed to take away from this? I don't know. And that's so frustrating to me because there is something here that I do genuinely really like, and that is that control aspect. And the belief aspect is interesting, especially when applied to film specifically. I was thinking about this the whole time. Film is unique in the fact that it engages almost every sense, and in some situations, it engages every single sense, and that's something that is very, very rare, but film can do it. Film is so special in that way, but it's all about its control and your belief in it, and that is something that I found very interesting that I'm not sure is intentional, and that's ultimately my biggest issue, is I don't know if any of this is intentional or not. It's just like, what do you believe? And that's so art house nonsense bullshit of it that I hate it. What do you believe in? Well, what do you think of that ending? What do you believe the ending was? And it's like a complete non-ending, but I do really like that this is through the lens of film, because you do have, if you really strip it down, essentially the director is Hugh Grant. He's putting on all these smoke and mirrors. He's putting on a show for the audience, who is the two sisters. And the whole point of this smoke and mirrors is to get your belief in it, is to completely let go into the experience, and that's something that religion does for so many people too, but that's what I personally love about film, and that's why I find it as sort of a religious experience, sort of a spiritual experience, because when it's perfect, when it works perfectly well for me, it is special. I do believe in it. I believe it, and I can get things out of it. And you have a director who can control everything, who controls every single piece of a film, from the top surface level of, we're just going to come into the door and some things are a little weird, and then down a level into this fake chapel, and down a level into the basement, and down a level into the cellar till we're back out again. You frequently end where you start, and the characters are different after their journey, and that's supposed to be what the audience feels too. We're supposed to feel different from this journey that we've taken together with a film that is well crafted, that's well controlled, and that has your belief in it. And yet this one fails on almost every level, because the control of the director frequently gives away the hand of the film, leading me to not believe in it. By the 20-minute mark, it's painfully obvious that Hugh Grant is putting on a show, that he is using smoke and mirrors to manipulate these girls into doing what he wants and to being where he wants them to be, and knowing that completely dissolves my belief in it. And when I don't believe it, I check out and start to see the cracks in it. And I think maybe that's what it's also saying about religion, is when you start to not believe in it, you start to see the cracks in it, so you have to have blind faith to keep going. But in film, that doesn't work.
I won't keep you if you wish to leave. But I want you to choose which door to go through based on your faith.
Because it is something that you can see and touch and feel and control and believe in without having to have blind faith. I don't go to a movie with my eyes shut. I go and see it. That's different from a religion when I can't see or touch anything. It's all abstract, and it's all whether you believe in it or not. Whereas film is film. I can get a physical copy. The actors, if I find them, I can grab them. The director, I can touch them. The script, I could read it. And yet I don't believe it. And that's a problem. Because for a movie about faith, for a movie about control, for a movie about spiritual experiences, this has none of that.